The French restaurant's heating was cranked up too high. I sat by the window, unbuttoning my suit jacket, then buttoning it again, 3 or 4 times in a row. The candle on the table had burned halfway down, wax dripping along the silver holder and solidifying into small, smooth white lumps at the base. The steak on my plate had gone completely cold, the juices congealed into a dark brown gelatinous film plastered to the white ceramic bottom. It looked like a failed chemistry experiment. I picked up my knife and fork, cut the steak into small pieces, and ate them one by one. Cold beef is tough and chewy, like biting into rubber, but I didn't want to waste it. This meal cost $350. Appetizer, main course, dessert set menu, paired with a 1998 Burgundy. Scarlett loved this place's foie gras, said it felt like being wrapped in a warm embrace every time she had it. She hadn't come today. The ring box in my pocket was pressing against my thigh. Small, but with an undeniable presence. I'd spent 3 weeks choosing that diamond. Not a showpiece, it just over a carat, but the cut and clarity were top tier. The designer said the setting was understated but timeless. Perfect for daily wear, the time. I'd thought, Scarlett is in the art world. A flashy ring might seem tacky to her. Now I realized I couldn't even picture what she'd look like wearing it. 4:37 p.m. Scarlett sent me her first voice message. I pressed play and set the phone on the table. Her voice filled the empty private dining room. Ethan. Something came up with Julian. He hurt himself again. His landlord called me. I need to go check on him. It might be a little late. Don't wait for me to eat. Eat without me. I'll come as soon as I'm done. A little late. When I heard those 3 words, I smiled involuntarily. It was probably an ugly smile. The waiter pouring wine across from me paused, almost tipping the decanter. Scarlett's a little late was never just a little late. I replied with an okay. Then I played her message again. Her voice was a little rushed, a little breathless. In the background, I could hear street traffic. She must have been running to catch a cab. She was always like this. One call from Julian, and she dropped everything, including dinner with me. Scarlett and I had been together for 7 years. 7 years ago, in autumn, she was standing under the ginkgo tree outside the art school building, crouching down to photograph fallen leaves with her phone. I passed by, thought the scene was beautiful, and stopped for a few seconds. She looked up and smiled at me. Are you a photography major too? No. Finance. Then what are you looking at? You're beautiful. We were young then. Saying lines that corny wasn't embarrassing. When she laughed, her eyes curved into little crescent moons. You're very direct, she said. Then she handed me her phone. Take a picture for me. I want to post it. That was our first conversation. Later I found out she'd actually been waiting for Julian that day. He was 2 hours late. She'd waited under that tree for 2 hours, pretending to photograph leaves to pass the time. And my "you're beautiful" was the only thing she'd received on time that day. Julian was her ex-boyfriend. Technically, her on-again, off-again ex. They'd dated for 3 years in college. After graduation, he'd gone to New York to pursue art, while she stayed in Bay City to work. They'd broken up after a year of long distance. The story should have ended there, but Julian had a gift. He always knew exactly when to reappear in Scarlett's life. A phone call about his depression, about his paintings not selling, about family problems, about wanting to kill himself. Every time, Scarlett would drop everything to go to him. The first time was on our 1-month anniversary. She spent the whole afternoon with him. He really needs me, she said. The second time was my promotion dinner. She went to the hospital to sit with Julian while he got in 4. She came back and said, I'm sorry, but I can't abandon him. The third time was the night my father died. She took Julian's call, then said, Ethan, Julian's having a breakdown. He needs me more than you do. That night, I stood alone at the funeral home entrance, waiting for her car. It was freezing cold, with sleet falling. My hands were so numb I couldn't hold my cigarette. I dropped 3. Finally, my mother called and asked, Where's your girlfriend? I said, She's stuck in traffic. That was the first time I lied for her. And it was the last. From that night on, something inside me had been slowly collapsing, like a house whose foundation had been soaked through by floodwater. It still looked intact from the outside, but inside, it was hollowed. 10 p.m. I texted Scarlett. Are you done yet? No replied. 11 p.m. I sent another. Scarlett, I'm at the restaurant. A 3-second voice message came back. Almost done. Just wait a little longer for me. I in the background, I could hear Julian's voice crying, saying, Scarlett, don't leave. 11.30. The waiter came over and asked if I wanted the plates cleared. I said no. I'd wait. He took away the decanter the wine had over-aired. Turned vinegary. I went to the restroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was calm. Too calm for someone who'd been stood up on their anniversary. But there was something burning in my eyes. Slowly. Like an oil-soaked wick that had been burning for 7 years without ever stopping. At midnight. The candle finally burned down to nothing. It flickered out with a soft pft. A thin wisp of white smoke rising and dissolving into the restaurant's warm amber light. I pulled the ring box out of my pocket and set it on the table. Opened it. Looked at the diamond. Light bounced off it from every angle, fracturing into tiny rainbows inside the platinum setting. I closed the box. Put it in my inner jacket pocket. Stood up. Paid the bill. The girl at the register glanced at my untouched dessert and asked carefully, "Sir, would you like that to go? No." I said, "Throw it away." When I stepped outside, the night wind hit my face. Cold. Bay City in deep winter. Dry and biting. Pedestrians hurried past with their necks tucked into their coat collars. I hailed an Uber and gave the driver my home address. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, probably noted my expression, and didn't try to make conversation. I got home at 12:40 a.m. The apartment was dark. Only my shoes on the entryway rack. Scarlett's light blue ballet flats weren't there. On the coffee table in the living room, an art book she'd been flipping through that morning lay open. A throw pillow had fallen to the floor. The air still held a faint trace of her citrus perfume. I hung my coat on the rack, felt the ring box in the inner pocket, then walked into the bedroom. I opened the bottom drawer of the nightstand. Inside were my old watch. And used for years. A few college-era letters, and a journal I'd started but never finished. I placed the ring box inside, covering it with the old journal. The drawer closed with a soft click. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my phone. Scarlett's social media had updated 0.3 minutes ago. A photo of a man's hands, bandages wrapped around the wrists, pale pink blood seeping through. The caption was a broken heart emoji. Julian had liked it. I stared at the photo. The bandages were loose and sloppy. The bloodstain was too bright. The position on the outside of the wrist was too shallow for a real suicide attempt. It looked more like a superficial scrape. Julian's self-harm was always like this. All thunder, no lightning. He never actually hurt himself. He just wanted Scarlett to feel sorry for him. But she could never see through it. 1:20 a.m. Scarlett texted me. A long message. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean to. Julian was really in a bad way today. He cut his wrist. There was so much blood. I stayed with him at the hospital. They gave him 5 stitches. He's stable now. I'm coming home right away. Please don't be mad. I'll make it up to you tomorrow. Anything you want to eat, I'll take you." I promised. I stared at the message in the dark. The cursor in the input box blinked. I typed a few words. Deleted them. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally, I wrote, "It's okay. Take care of him. Stay safe." I sent it. Then flipped my phone face down on the nightstand. Outside the window, the city lights flickered in the distance. A vast constellation of slow-breathing fireflies. I leaned back against the headboard. A crack ran across the ceiling from the light fixture, crooked and uneven. Like an old scar. At 3 a.m. I replied to my grandfather's message. It was short. "Okay, I'll meet Sky," before sending. I hesitated for half a second. My thumb hovering over the screen. Then I remembered the candle burned to nothing. The cold steak. The empty chair. I pressed send. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Grandfather's reply. "Tomorrow night." I put the phone aside and closed my eyes. In the dark, Scarlett's face emerged. Smiling, frowning, eyes red as she said she was sorry. 7 years of apologies. But she'd never once changed. Some apologies lose their meaning when you've heard them too many times. I turned over, facing the wall. The wall was white, clean, no marks at all. I imagined what tomorrow would bring. Meeting Sky. A woman I'd never even seen a photo of. An arranged marriage, orchestrated by my grandfather, based on mutual benefit. I used to think that kind of arrangement was ridiculous. Now I didn't find it funny at all. At least an arranged marriage wouldn't stand you up. At 7 a.m. The alarm went off. I woke up and found the space beside me empty. Scarlett hadn't come home all night. I grabbed my phone and saw another message from her. Sent at 5 a.m. "Ethan, Julian said he's afraid to be alone. I'm staying with him until morning. Don't be mad. I'll bring you breakfast." I read it once. Locked the screen. Got up. Showered. Changed. At the door, I noticed a pair of light blue ballet flats on the shoe rack. Kicked off haphazardly. Scarlett must have come back at some point. Maybe 5 or 6 a.m. Too exhausted to do more than collapse on the couch. I walked to the living room. She was curled up on the sofa, still in her coat. Her makeup smudged. Her eyes were closed, but her brow was furrowed. Like she was having a nightmare. I bent down, picked up the fallen blanket, and draped it over her. She stirred, murmured something that sounded like Julian. Don't. Then fell back asleep. I watched her for 2 seconds. Then I turned and left. I in the elevator. I took out the ring box and looked at it. Then I put it back. I was meeting Sky tonight. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Pale winter morning light poured in. I stepped out. Behind me, the doors slid shut. At 2:30 p.m. I arrived early at the coffee shop where I was supposed to meet Sky. It was tucked away on a sycamore-lined lane in Bay City's old district. Small storefront. Easy to miss. 5 tables inside. Watercolors by unknown artists on the walls. An old record player in the corner. The needle crackling softly over a jazz tune I couldn't name. Sky had texted that she'd be 10 minutes late. I replied, no rush. Then I ordered an Americano and sat by the window to wait. Outside, a child chased an orange cat down the lane. The cat leaped onto a wall and sat there, refusing to come down. The child jumped and shouted beneath it. I watched that scene for a while, then pulled out my phone. Without thinking, I opened Scarlett's social media. She deleted last night's bandage photo. Her latest post, from 10 a.m., was a photo of a box of strawberries. The caption, thanks for the breakfast. That someone clearly wasn't me. I hadn't bought her strawberries. She'd still been asleep when I left this morning. I stared at the bright red strawberry for a few seconds, then flipped my phone face down on the table. The coffee shop door swung open. A wind chime jingled. A woman in a slate blue coat walked in, her hair loose around her shoulders, carrying a canvas tote bag with a logo I didn't recognize. Her face was younger than I'd expected. Or at least, more alive than the ID photo my grandfather had sent. In that photo, she'd been tight-lipped, serious as a high schooler preparing for a debate. Now she had a slight smile, and her eyes were bright. She scanned the room as she entered, then met my gaze and nodded. Ethan. She walked over and set her tote on the chair across from me. Sorry I'm late. Traffic. It's fine. I stood up to pull out her chair, then sat back down after she did. What'll you have? Hot latte. Half sweet. She said this to the approaching barista, then turned to me and looked me over. The way she did it was efficient. Like she was evaluating a bid. Quick, precise, without excessive politeness. You look more nervous than I expected. Yeah. She set her tote by her feet and pulled out a notebook and pen, placing them on the table with crisp, businesslike movements. But I'm nervous too. Let's get straight to it. You know what our families want. Arranged marriage, mutual benefit, social alignment. But first, I need to confirm one thing. Are you on board? She asked the question seriously. No teasing. No testing. She genuinely wanted my answer. I thought for a moment. I put away an engagement ring last night. Sky raised an eyebrow, took a sip of her latte, and didn't interrupt. I spent 7 years trying to figure something out. Last night I finally did. I leaned back. I waited for someone for 7 years. She kept standing me up for someone else. Yesterday was our 7th anniversary. I booked her favorite restaurant, had a ring in my pocket. She didn't show. At 3 a.m., I texted my grandfather back and said I'd meet you. The coffee shop went quiet for a few seconds. The record player switched to a new track. Slow piano, gently flowing. Sky set down her cup, folded her hands on the table, and looked at me. Oh, you hate her. No. I said, I'm just tired. Sky nodded. That nod hit me somewhere. She didn't ask anything else. She understood. She understood that kind of exhaustion, the kind that piles up over 7 years, filling a warehouse so full you don't even have the energy for hatred anymore. Let me give you my situation. She opened her notebook. It was covered in writing, but her handwriting was neat and clean. I'm an only child. My family runs a private equity firm. Not huge, but solid. My dad had a bad investment last year. Ended up owing your grandfather's firm a large bridge loan. Your grandfather offered to forgive the debt if I marry you. 3-year term. We stay together or we don't. Separate finances. My dad agreed. I'm in principle okay with it. But I have one condition. What's that? We don't put on a show. She met my eyes. People can say whatever they want outside. But between us, no acting. You can handle your personal situation however you need. I won't interfere. Finances stay separate. Holidays and family events. We show up together. 3 years from now. If neither of us has other plans, we part amicably. She leaned back, Waiting. Late afternoon sunlight slanted through the window, casting a thin shadow across her lashes. I have one condition too, I said. If we do this, don't make me wear a ring and wait for someone who never comes. Sky paused. Then she smiled. A smile different from the one she'd given me at the door. Warmer. More genuine. Deal. We talked for about an hour. Careers, family backgrounds, lifestyle habits, personal goals. Sky said she currently managed a fund focused on cultural industries. Busy job. Lots of travel. She probably wouldn't have time for a real marriage. I said my day job at the finance firm was a cover. I was actually running a few side operations for my grandfather, so my schedule was irregular too. She looked at me after I said that and said, Ethan, you're more complicated than I expected. I smiled. So are you? At the door. She paused and turned back. By the way, yesterday was your 7th anniversary. Yes. How much did she remember? The question caught me off guard. I thought about it. She knew it was our anniversary, but she thought Julian needed her more. Sky was silent for a few seconds. Then she said, Ethan, this isn't really my place, but I'll say it anyway. Whether someone's worth waiting for isn't about how many times she says she's sorry. It's about whether she actually changes the next time. She pulled her coat collar tighter, gave me a small wave, and turned. Stay in touch. She walked away, her figure disappearing around the bend in the sycamore lane. I stood at the coffee shop entrance, watching that direction. The wind swept fallen leaves off the ground, then let them drop again with a soft rustle. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a screenshot from 3 years ago. Julian had just come back to Bay City. He'd somehow found my WhatsApp and sent me a long message at midnight. I'd read it 3 times, then saved it. The screenshot held his self-assured, self-important words. Ethan, I know you're with Scarlett now, but you also know she and I were together for 3 years. I know her better than anyone. She can't leave me because only I know what she really needs. It's not that you're not good enough. You're just too stable. You can't give her what she craves. That torn, painful feeling of saving someone. Trust me, she'll come back to me eventually. You're just a placeholder. I deleted Julian as a contact after reading that, but I never deleted the screenshot. For 3 years, it sat in my encrypted folder. Sometimes I'd open it, stare at it for a few seconds, then close it. I stood on the sycamore lane for a while. The sky was darkening. The streetlights had come on, casting yellowish light onto the cobblestones. I put my phone back in my pocket and started walking toward the subway station. Scarlett's call came in. Ethan. Her voice was cheerful. Where are you? I got off work early. I'm so sorry about last night. I want to make it up to you. I booked that Japanese place you like. 7 o'clock. Okay. I stood at the subway entrance. People streamed past me, hurrying home. Scarlett, I said, I have plans tonight. A pause on the other end. What plans? You never turn me down. Work stuff. I said. Rain check. Her voice dipped in disappointment, then perked up again. Okay, well, come home early when you're done. I left you strawberries in the fridge. They're really sweet. I hung up and walked into the station. Swiped my card. Stood on the platform waiting for the train. Wind blew through the tunnel, stinging my eyes. The train lights appeared in the distance. Growing brighter. Closer. I boarded and found a spot in the corner. Through the window, I could see my own reflection. Same face from the restaurant bathroom last night. Calm to the point of blankness. But if you looked closely, the fire in my eyes that had burned for 7 years. It had shrunk. Just a little. Scarlett had said you never turn me down. She seemed to have forgotten that. Over 7 years, I was the one who'd been turned down. Countless times. The train started moving. The tunnel walls raced past in a blur of flickering lights. I closed my eyes. Sky's parting words echoed in my head. Whether someone's worth waiting for isn't about how many times she says she's sorry. It's about whether she actually changes the next time. She won't. I knew that better than anyone. But that was okay. I wasn't waiting anymore. Chapter 2. The Lynn family estate sat on Maplewood Lane in Bay City's western hills. A sprawling old compound of gray brick and black tiles. 3 courtyards deep. Far heavier and more solid than any modern faux historic mansion. In the center courtyard stood a 200-year-old locust tree. Bare in winter, its branches spreading like a giant half-opened umbrella. In summer, it cast deep shade over the entire yard. In winter, it just looked desolate. When I arrived, the butler, Mr. Zhou, took my coat and murmured, "The old master is waiting for you in the study." The study was on the east side of the second courtyard, an old carved wooden door half open, revealing the scent of tea leaves and warm charcoal. I knocked twice. My grandfather's low, solid voice came from inside. "Come in." I pushed the door open. He sat in a rosewood armchair, an old tea tray before him, a purple clay teapot letting out thin wisps of steam. He wore a dark, gray Chinese-style linen jacket, his white hair neatly combed, deep wrinkles on his face. But his eyes were sharp, too sharp for a man in his 70s. He looked up as I entered and gestured to the cushion across from him. Sit. I took off my shoes and knelt on the cushion. He poured a cup of tea and slid it toward me. I didn't drink. I held it with both hands. Waiting, you met the Sioux girl. Grandfather's voice was slow, deliberate. Yes, and I chose my words carefully. Smart, clear-headed, no nonsense. He grunted, picked up his own cup, took a sip, and set it down. His gaze settled on me. That look I'd known since childhood, appearing gentle but capable of peeling you open layer by layer. When I was young and in trouble, he'd call me into the study, give me that look, say nothing. And I'd confess everything myself. Ethan, he finally spoke. You're 28. In our generation, you're the only male heir. Your father died young. Your mother remarried. You've been out there on your own all these years. I didn't stop you. But I never said I wasn't watching. I stayed silent. The tea in my cup trembled slightly. You think I don't know how you've been living? His cup hit the table with a heavy thunk. 7 years. Letting some girl push you around. You've been making a fool of the Lin family name. I lowered my head, my throat moving. I didn't defend myself. You know who Julian is? Grandfather suddenly changed the subject. Yes, I said. He raised funds from an old investor in Scarlet Circle. That investor works for us. You told me. Not just that. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Look for yourself. I opened it. Inside were printed documents. Julian's resume, financial records, project funding logs, and an investigation report. I flipped through, faster and faster. When I reached the last few pages, my fingers stopped. The documents spelled it out clearly. Julian's art project in Bay City had received 4 rounds of funding. 2 of those introductions had come through Scarlet. What Scarlet didn't know was that both investors were actually my grandfather's people. The old man had been watching Julian. His project, his cash flow, every transaction. In other words, every penny Julian had made in Bay City over the past 3 years. The Lin family had seen clearly. Grandfather. My voice was dry. When did you start investigating him? 1 year into your relationship with that girl. His tone was flat. I had someone check out what kind of man he was. Not because of him. Because of you. You're the only grandson I have. I wasn't going to let anyone make a fool of you. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? He looked at me, poured himself another cup. Would it have helped? Back then you were completely besotted. If I told you her ex was scheming behind the scenes, would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was trying to break you up? Some things you have to see for yourself. No one else can show you. I clutched the documents, the paper crinkling under my grip. The study was so quiet I could hear the charcoal crackling in the brazier. But I've checked out the Sioux girl's background. Grandfather took a sip. Good family, sharp mind, loyal to her father, but not blindly so. If you marry her, it's a lifeline for her family. For you. You need to pull that 7-year thorn out first. Love can come after marriage. Or not. That's up to you. But after a few years, you realize love is the icing. A reliable person is the cake. I looked up at him. He was leaning back in his chair, eyes half closed, watching the steam rise from the tea tray. His expression was calm, as if he were commenting on the weather. But I knew what it meant. He'd waited 7 years for me to walk out on my own, to make my own choice. He'd watched me fall without reaching out, because he knew that only by falling could I learn to stand. Grandfather, I said, I'll sign the agreement. But I have one condition. Name it. Regarding Sky. I want to approach this as a personal partnership. The marriage stays private until I've cleared up my situation with Scarlet. I don't want Sky caught up in something I haven't finished. My grandfather looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded. Fine. Handle it your way. But don't drag it out. The longer you drag, the messier it gets. You've been too patient all these years. It's made you sick. I stood up and bowed. Understood. As I walked out, he said one more thing. By the way, Julian's project is about to run out of cash. If you want to move, let me know anytime. I stopped at the study door and looked back. He was leaning back in his chair, eyes closed. The teapot still sent up thin steam. Sandalwood smoke mixed with the scent of old wood, lingering in the air. His old face, lit by the dim yellow lamp, looked serene. Like an ancient tree, roots buried so deep you couldn't see the bottom, but whose crown gave shade to all beneath it. Okay, I said, when I left the old estate. It was fully dark. Mr. Zhou held the car door open for me. I got in and started the engine. As I drove down Maplewood Lane, The compound's silhouette grew smaller in the rearview mirror, finally merging into the night, that I stopped at a red light and picked up my phone. Sky had sent a message 2 hours ago. My dad asked how it went tonight. I said not bad. He got so excited he almost opened his vintage Mount I. I smiled and replied, free tomorrow. Come to my office. I have a project that might need your fund. After sending that, I scrolled to Scarlett's chat. She'd sent several messages throughout the day. Ethan, what time are you coming home? I put the strawberries in the fridge. Why aren't you replying? Are you still mad? I'm sorry. The last one was a sad kitten sticker sent 5 minutes ago. I stared at the sticker. It was almost funny. She always thought a sticker could fix everything. She always thought if she just softened. I'd open my arms like before, but I was tired. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat and pressed the gas, merging into the night's flowing river of lights. Bay City's winter spread out before me. Neon streetlights, countless windows glowing through the cold. I drove, feeling an odd calm. It was strange. Like a swamp inside my chest had finally been drained, revealing solid ground beneath. Nothing hurt anymore. Starting today, I was going to be Ethan again. The real Ethan. The one who didn't need to wait for someone who never came just to feel something. 1 week later, Scarlett suddenly became very attentive. She took a day off work, went to the spa, bought a new cream-colored cashmere dress, and deep-cleaned the entire apartment. That evening, I came home to find the living room lit with scented candles, flowers, and wine on the coffee table. She stood by the dining table in a dress I'd never seen, wearing a carefully prepared, eager smile. Ethan. She came over and hugged me, kissing me on the cheek. I'm making it up to you tonight. I missed our anniversary, so I'm making it up today. I booked a new French restaurant, even better reviews than the last one. Go change. I'll wait. I stood in the entryway, not moving. I looked down at her arms around my waist. Her hands were beautiful. Long fingers, thin calluses on the pads from years of holding a brush. Those hands had painted many pictures. They'd also gripped a phone countless times, replying to Julian in the middle of the night. I'm on my way. Okay, I said. I'll go change. In the bedroom, I opened a shoebox I hadn't touched in a long time. Inside was a velvet pouch. A pair of custom cufflinks. I'd spent 2 months choosing them, originally meant to give to Scarlett on our anniversary. The inside was engraved with our initials ES, but I wasn't going to give them now. I placed the cufflinks in the bottom drawer of the nightstand, next to the ring box. 2 boxes now, lying side by side. Quiet, like they were waiting for a ceremony that would never come. The French restaurant was on the top floor of Bay City's tallest financial tower, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. Scarlett had booked a table by the window, where you could see the famous river winding through the city, cruise ships moving slowly like pacing stars. She looked beautiful tonight. The cream dress made her skin glow. Her hair was pinned up, revealing the graceful curve of her neck. Small pearl studs swayed as she talked. She talked the whole meal, about a successful exhibition at her gallery, about interesting people she'd met curating, about how bright and clean the apartment looked now that she'd reorganized it. Her tone was buoyant, careful. Like a child trying to make up for a mistake. I sat across from her, nodding, smiling, making the occasional I noticed she didn't mention Julian once. Not a single word. That was unusual. Normally, at least a third of our conversations involved updates on his mental state. He had insomnia again. His project's almost done. He had a good day today, tonight. She carefully avoided his name. She probably thought not mentioning him was the same as making amends. Ethan. She suddenly stopped, setting down her knife and fork, looking at me seriously. You seem different tonight. Are you still mad at me? I took a bite of foie gras. It was cooked perfectly. Lightly crisp on the outside, melting on the inside. The chef here was good, I said. What would I be mad about, really? She leaned forward, placing her hand over mine on the table. Her hand was cool, the touch familiar, almost heartbreakingly familiar. I know I messed up the other night, but I told you. Julian was really in a bad way. I didn't mean to stand you up. Ethan, you're the most important person to me. You have to understand that you're the most important person to me. She'd said it so many times. It always sounded sincere. Gentle eyes, soft tone, impossible to argue with. But after every time, the next call from Julian, she'd leave again. The most important person in her life was never first. Couldn't even crack the top 3. I looked at her hand on mine. Then I gently pulled mine back and took a sip of wine. Scarlett, I said, we've been together 7 years. She tilted her head, waiting. 7 years. I've changed plans for you more than 30 times. I've lost count of the dates you canceled because of Julian. You got my birthday wrong 3 times. You were at the hospital with Julian the night my father died. I never held any of it against you. Scarlett's expression shifted. Her smile froze, like ice forming on a pond. Ethan, why are you bringing all this up? Nothing. I took another sip. I just want you to know those 7 years. I gave them willingly. I never blamed you. But I don't want it anymore. She froze. The pianist was playing a slow piece. Notes drifting across the room, melting into the warm yellow light. What? What do you mean? Her voice tightened. I opened my mouth to speak, then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Sky. Scarlett saw it too. Her eyes lingered on the name for a moment, then lifted to meet mine. There was something new in her look, like wariness. I answered on speaker. Ethan. Sky's voice came through clear and direct. I picked out the engagement ring. Can you come with me to pick it up tomorrow? A half second of silence on the other end. Scarlett's chopsticks clattered onto the plate. She looked frozen. The color drained from her face, her pupils dilating slightly, lips parting. Sky must have sensed the pause. Or is this a bad time? No. I said, steady. What time tomorrow? 3 p.m. I'll send you the address. Okay. After the call, a long silence settled over the table. Scarlett's hands still hung in midair. The fallen chopsticks lay between the plate and tablecloth. No one reaching for them. Outside, the river glittered, distant and beautiful. Our reflections were separated by the width of the table. Ethan. Her voice had changed. Strange. Sharp. Who's Sky? What engagement ring? I set down my wine glass and leaned back, finally meeting her eyes. Her face held shock, confusion. And something like territorial anger. That anger was interesting. Like she'd just realized something she thought would never be lost was slipping through her fingers. Scarlett. I said. You told me I was the most important person to you. I believed it for 7 years. But do you know what most important actually means? It means when someone needs you. I'm the first one you push aside. It means on our anniversary, you can spend the whole night with another man and think a single sorry is enough. You think that's what I deserved? And I know. She shook her head, her voice trembling. That was a special case. 7 years. I cut her off. How many special cases have there been? Every time. Every single time that it's an emergency. Every time he needs you. I never fought Julian for you. Because you said you needed to be there. I let you go, but I don't want to let you go anymore. I reached into my pocket and touched the ring box. Hesitated. I didn't take it out. I put it back. That box. Scarlett suddenly said. Her eyes fixed on my hand. What's in your pocket? I looked at her. Then I smiled. Nothing. I said. Something I was going to give you on our anniversary. But not anymore. Scarlett shot to her feet, her chair scraping against the floor with a harsh screech. Nearby tables turned to look. She didn't notice. She braced her hands on the table, her chest heaving. Ethan. Her voice was nearly hysterical. How could you do this? 7 years together. And now you're telling me you're getting engaged to someone else. Are you insane? I stood up slowly, put on my jacket. Then I took out a stack of cash from my wallet and set it on the table. Scarlett. I said. Your anniversary dinner is paid for. Next time Julian needs you, let him call you. I turned and walked away. Behind me, the sound of shattered porcelain. She must have knocked over her wine glass. I didn't look back. After a few steps, I heard her crying behind me. Ethan. Stop. Come back here. I stopped, but only stopped. I didn't turn. Scarlett. I said. I've said everything I need to say. 7 years. If you can't hear me now, that's your problem. Then I walked out. As the elevator doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of her through the gap. Standing by the table, tears streaming down her face. Beautiful, fragile, the kind of sight that would have broken me before. But not this time. The elevator descended. The indicator lights ticked down. I leaned against the wall and pulled out the ring box, opening it just to look. The diamond caught the elevator's cold white light and sparkled. Sorry, I whispered. You came too late. I closed the box and put it away. The elevator chimed. The door slid open. Night air rushed in from the lobby, cool and sharp, carrying the scent of the city's evening. I stepped out and merged into Bay City's night. Scarlett made a scene for 3 days. Day 1. 47 missed calls, hundreds of messages, ranging from Ethan. Come home. Let's talk to. Is there someone else? To if you marry someone else, I'll kill myself. I didn't reply to any of them. But I didn't delete them either. I needed to remember. This belated, hysterical, post-loss obsession was just the instinct of a predator losing its prey. Day 2. She showed up at my office. The receptionist called me nervously. Mr. Lin, there's a Miss Scarlett here waiting for you. She seems upset. I watched through the security cameras, Scarlett sat in the lobby, eyes swollen, no makeup, hugging her bag that haggard that I told the receptionist to say I was in a meeting and unavailable. She waited 3 hours, then left. She sent me a message as she left. Ethan, you won't even see me now that I didn't reply. Day 3. I went home to get some things. I was staying at my South Side apartment temporarily, didn't want to be under the same roof. When I opened the door, the living room light was on. Scarlett sat in the middle of the couch, hair disheveled. A stack of papers spread across the coffee table. When I got closer, I saw what they were. The ring box, the cufflinks, and a copy of the engagement agreement Sky and I had signed, but she'd found everything. Ethan. She looked up, dark circles under her eyes. Voice hoarse. When did you get all this? When did you buy the ring? You and her. You and Sky. When did it start? I stood in the entryway for a moment. Then I changed into slippers and walked into the living room. Sitting on the armchair across from her, Scarlett. I said, the ring was meant for you. I booked that French restaurant. The one you like. While you were at the hospital with Julian until dawn. The next day, I put the ring away. Then I went to meet Sky. Her lips trembled. Her fingers gripped the ring box. Knuckles white. She opened it, looked at the diamond, then slammed it shut. Like she'd been burned. And threw it back on the table. Then why are you marrying her? Her voice was shrill. 7 years that you're going to marry a woman you don't even know. Ethan, are you crazy? How could you do this to me? How have I treated you? I leaned back, watching her. Scarlett, for 7 years, have I ever wronged you? I picked you up when you worked late. I let you go when Julian needed you. I held you when you were upset. I paid your gallery rent out of my own savings when you were struggling. You've said sorry to me 1,000 times. I forgave you every time. You think forgiveness has no cost, don't you? You think a soft word, and I'll come running back. But sorry. Said too many times doesn't mean anything anymore. Scarlett opened her mouth. Tears rolled down her cheeks, falling onto the papers in her hand, blurring the ink. But I love you. Her voice shrank. Deflated. Ethan, I really do love you. You know that. Julian, he just needs me. He's different. Can't you understand? I understand. I said, I really do. You love being needed by him. The more broken he is, the more you feel needed. And I never worried you. I never had crises. I always waited. So you always went to him first. Because you knew I'd be there. Scarlett, for 7 years. You never once thought I might leave. You never once thought, what if Ethan stops waiting? You were so sure I'd wait. So you kept making me wait. Scarlett curled up on the couch, burying her face in her knees. Her shoulders shook. Her sobs came out muffled, broken. Like a wounded animal. Before, seeing her like this, I would have gone to her, held her, said I'm here, but this time I just sat across from her and watched. Finally, she lifted her face. Tear-streaked. And looked at me. What about now? She asked. Are you still willing to come back, Scarlett? I said, you asked me who Sky is. I'll tell you. She's someone my grandfather arranged. Good family. Good match. Transactional. Right. But she said something to me that I kept thinking about. She said that whether someone's worth waiting for isn't about how many times they say sorry. It's about whether they actually change the next time. You've said sorry to me for 7 years. What have you changed? Scarlett didn't answer. She just lowered her head again, burying her face in her knees. Shaking. I stood up and walked to the bedroom. Packed a few clothes. Laptop into my bag. When I passed through the living room, Scarlett lifted her head, her voice raw. You're leaving, yeah? I'm staying at the South Side place for now. When are you coming back? I stopped at the door and looked back. The living room light was warm. Outlining her thin figure in a soft glow. She sat on the couch, looking up at me, face wet, eyes red like a rabbit's. Helpless, fragile. Scarlett, I said, do you remember asking Julian that? When he was in New York. Asking when he'd come back. You asked him for 3 years. Then you met me. You realized you didn't have to wait anymore. Because someone was waiting for you. Her entire body froze. Like she'd been struck. Her expression went from confusion to dawning horror. A kind of wordless, breaking pain. You. Her lips moved. You're getting revenge. I know. I said, I'm just telling you. Placeholders leave too. I opened the door and walked out. As it closed behind me, I heard a sound from inside. A sharp, almost inhuman wail that cut through the door and echoed down the hallway for a moment before the heavy security door muffled it into nothing. I stood in the hallway, hand still on the doorknob. Behind that door was the home I'd lived in for 4 years. Scarlett's paintings on the walls, her plants on the balcony, 2 sets of dishes stacked in the kitchen. Every corner had her mark. Every mark told me those 7 years were real, but the door was closed. I let go of the handle and walked to the elevator. just before the doors closed. I heard a door open at the end of the hallway. But I didn't look up. The elevator went down. Numbers ticked one by one. Cold white light above me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Sky? Heard things are a little rough over there. Need help? I replied. No. Almost done, Sky. Then are we still picking up the ring tomorrow? I stared at that line. Then I smiled. I in the corner of the elevator. In the silence of 11 p.m. I smiled at my phone. Yeah. I typed. Sent. The elevator chimed. Doors opened. Once again. I walked into Bay City's night. But this time I was walking in a different direction. Chapter 3. 2 days later. Scarlett showed up at the South Side apartment. When I opened the door, she stood outside in a black coat, hair tied back. She looked better than the last few days, at least she'd put on makeup. The swelling around her eyes had gone down. She carried 2 paper bags containing a few of my favorite takeout dishes, and a box of handmade cookies. I brought you food. She said, you're probably not eating properly by yourself. I stepped aside and let her in. She walked slowly, her gaze scanning the apartment, like she was checking for something. It was clean, bare, no sign of another woman. When she saw that, her shoulders relaxed, visibly. Ethan. She put the bags on the dining table and turned to face me. I thought about what you said. You were right. I have been making you wait. But I promise you, I will change. I've told Julian it's over. I told him I can't be at his beck and call anymore. He needs to see a doctor. Get real treatment. I gave his contact info to his family. I'm not going to see him anymore. She looked at me. Like she was waiting for a test score. Her eyes held a kind of desperate hope. That was something I'd never seen from her in 7 years. And that made me sad. She'd only learned to beg at the edge of losing me. By the time she learned, I no longer needed it. Scarlett. I pushed the 2 bags aside and gestured to the chair. Sit down. I have something to say. She sat, hands in her lap, posture like a schoolgirl. Sky, I said, I am marrying her. The engagement agreement is signed. The wedding is next spring. This isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. And it's not to get back at you. When I decided to marry her, I wasn't thinking about making Scarlett regret anything. I was thinking, I can't keep living like that. Scarlett's lips moved. Her voice was raspy. But, do you love her? What do you even like about her? You barely know her. What do I like about her? I sat down and poured her a glass of water. One for her. One for me. She won't stand me up on our anniversary. She won't push me to the back of the line when I need her. When she has dinner with me, she looks at me, not at her phone, waiting for someone else to call. You think these are small things. But small things pile up. Scarlett lowered her head. Her fingers twisted together. Her nails were painted pale pink, chipped at the edges. Like she hadn't had time to fix them in days. Ethan. She whispered. I really messed up. Give me one chance, just one. I won't go near Julian again. I promised. I looked at the crown of her head. She was wearing that citrus perfume today. The one I used to love. So many times. That scent had made me soften. Scarlett. I said. I thought about leaving you so many times over 7 years. But you'd bow your head. Say sorry. Cried out, and I'd come back. I always told myself. Just wait a little longer. Give her one more chance. Eventually she'll understand. But you never understood. You only learned how to make me soften. You never learned how to make me feel safe. Her shoulders started shaking. Tears slipped from her lashes, dropping onto her knees. But I don't blame you. I said. I used to think it was you torturing me. Then I realized that it was me. I allowed it. I kept giving you the confidence that Ethan would always wait. You didn't do anything wrong. That you just used the power I gave you. Now I'm taking it back. Scarlett stood up, slowly, like a rusty machine forcing itself to move. She walked over to me and crouched down, looking up at me from below. Tears still streaming. Ethan. She said my full name, her voice broken. Do you hate me? No. I met her eyes. Scarlett. You were someone I truly loved for 7 years. I don't hate you. I'm just not going to continue. She looked at me. A long moment. Then she stood up slowly, picked up the paper bags. Then, her voice caught. I hope you're happy. She turned and walked to the door. At the threshold, she paused. Without turning back. The ring. She said. I left it on the coffee table. I didn't take it. The door opened. Closed. She was gone. I sat at the table. On the coffee table, the ring box sat quietly. Light from the lamp fell on its surface, reflecting a thin line of light. I walked over and picked it up. Opened it. The diamond glittered under the light. Quiet. Like a promise that would never be delivered. I put the box in the drawer. Then I picked up my phone and texted Sky. It's done. Let's talk about wedding details. Sky? You sure? That fast? I typed. 7 years was slow enough. Sky sent a thumbs up emoji. Then, come to dinner at my place tomorrow. My dad wants to meet you. We can set the date. I stared at set the date for a few seconds. Replied. Okay. I set the phone down. The apartment was quiet. No TV. No dishes clinking. No Scarlett's voice on the balcony making calls. Just the wind outside. And the faint sound of distant traffic. I sat on the couch for a while. Then I opened my laptop and started scrolling through the wedding venue list Sky had sent. Page after page of photos. Lights. Flowers. White gowns. Champagne glasses. Everything looked like it belonged to another world. But in that world, no one would wait for me at a table until the candle burned out. Julian's project collapsed. The news came through while I was in a garden in Suzhou. A private estate from the late Qing dynasty. Looking at wedding venues with Sky, she'd chosen it for its compact elegance. Winding corridors. Layered rockeries. A pond with a camellia tree in full white bloom. She said they wouldn't need much decoration. The garden itself was the best backdrop. Owen. My colleague at the finance firm, but really my assistant for family matters. Called me. Mr. Lin. His voice was low, like he was standing in a hallway. Julian's financing is completely cut off. The third-round investor pulled out yesterday, said his project data had problems. He was already behind on contractors and materials. A bunch of them showed up at his studio this morning. He called the cops, but they said it was a civil matter. I stood under the camellia tree. A few petals floated on the water. Pink-white, spinning slowly. One more thing. Owen's voice had a hint of amusement. The creditor who bought his company's debt sent a demand letter this afternoon. They're going after him personally. His studio and car are being seized. And the creditor is a special purpose fund under Sky's family group. I paused. Then I couldn't help smiling. Sky was standing under the covered walkway a few feet away, talking to the wedding planner. She must have heard me. She turned and looked over. Afternoon sunlight fell through the garden's lattice windows, dappling her in shifting patterns of light and shadow. She raised an eyebrow, mouthing, "What's up?" I shook my head. Nothing. Got it. I told Owen, "Leave it alone for now. If Julian comes looking, tell him to talk to his creditors." I hung up and walked back to Sky. The wedding planner was discussing the main ceremony area. Sky pointed to a platform across the pond. "What about there?" "Backed by the rockery, facing the water. The light comes in from the west at 3 or 4 p.m. No extra lighting needed." I looked at it. It was good. The whole garden was quiet and serene, the water reflecting the outlines of white walls and dark tiles. The camellia trembled in the breeze. "Sky," I said quietly, "Julian's thing, that was your people." She looked up from the flower arrangements the planner had handed her. Half the bridge debt he owed was transferred to our fund. I heard your grandfather was behind it, so I told legal to move on it. Moved on it. You're seizing his house. Sky set down the catalog and considered this seriously. "Ethan," she said, "I've been in investment for 5 years. I've seen hundreds of deadbeats. Collection isn't something you delay. He owes money. My people collect lawfully. It's proper business." Her face was deadpan, but there was a glint in her eyes. Like a fox, barely concealed. "You did this on purpose." "I'm a professional," she said. "Professionals don't go easy just because of a debtor's name." We looked at each other across half a table's distance. Then I laughed. She laughed too. The wedding planner waited a moment, then carefully interjected. "So shall we go over the guest flow again?" Julian hit rock bottom faster than I expected. Within a week, his studio was sealed by court order. His landlord was evicting him for unpaid rent. He'd moved into a budget motel. He posted a long rant on social media. Playing the victim, saying he was being crushed by corporate predators, that his art was being destroyed by powerful enemies with a grudge that he didn't name names. But anyone paying attention knew who he meant. Scarlett called me once after seeing that post. I answered, "Ethan." Her voice was calm. No tears. No accusations. "Was Julian's collapse your doing?" "That he owed money." I said. "Creditors collect. Standard business. But you knew that money." She stopped. "You knew that project was never going to work. You could have warned him, Scarlett." I leaned against the balcony railing, looking down at the traffic below. "You used to tell me Julian was a brilliant artist, just underappreciated. But a real genius would know how to do basic cost accounting. His project was burning investor cash from day one. No business model, just stories to bring people in. I didn't have to do anything. He would have collapsed on his own. I just didn't bail him out." A long silence on the other end. Finally, Scarlett said softly, "Ethan, you've changed." "Yes," I said. "I have. Should have happened a long time ago." I hung up and scrolled to Julian's post. A few likes, one comment from a former collaborator. Mr. Julian, can you pay the $3,000 you owe me before we talk about dreams? Julian deleted that comment quickly. Julian's next move came 3 days later. Someone leaked a document to several WeChat groups in Bay City's art scene, a complete background check on his investors. It showed clearly that all the funding he'd been bragging about came from a single source. Maplewood Capital, a well-established, old money firm, the legal representative on Maplewood Capital's registration. Ethan Lynn's grandfather. The news spread like wildfire. My phone buzzed constantly. Owen. Industry contacts. Then Scarlett. She sent one message. Very short. Ethan. Your grandfather is Edward Lynn. I stared at the screen. Replied. Yes. She didn't respond. The bigger explosion came 10 days later. Sky and I officially announced our engagement through a joint statement from her family's fund and Maplewood Capital. Low-key wording, but it named both parties clearly. Ms. Sky Sue and Mr. Ethan Lynn will be married in the spring. The day the announcement dropped, Bay City's upper social circles went into shock. People who'd never heard of me scrambled to find out who I was. Those who knew analyzed the power play behind the merger. Rumors flew. The wildest one said Edward Lynn was retiring. I was the heir, and marrying Sky was a power consolidation move. I read those rumors in my office and called Sky. Have you seen the news? Yep. She sounded amused. Some people are saying you're marrying me to take over my family's fund. Others say I'm using your grandfather's name to climb. Want to respond, Tio what? They're not entirely wrong. 2 seconds of silence. Then Sky laughed out loud. Ethan, are you ever going to learn to make conversation? I can. I said, I just don't lie to you. She laughed some more. Then she got serious. But really, when are you going to show your cards? Some people still think you're a mid-level finance guy. I thought about it. Next weekend. At the engagement party. Everyone will be there. Good. She said. I'll make sure you get a suit worthy of the Lynn heir. No showing up and off the rack. I don't own anything off the rack. You really don't know how to talk to people. Do you? I hung up. Smiling. I sat at my desk, watching the city skyline through the window. Bay City's evening had a soft blue-gray tone like a watercolor painting washed clean on my computer screen. Julian's funding report was still open. The last few pages were marked in red like fresh blood. Still wet. I closed that file. Opened another. It contained years of investment records. Cultural industries. Biotech. New energy. Diverse but solid. Every transaction had solid returns and strategic value. This was the foundation I'd been building since I was 18. Working with my grandfather. The portfolio I'd quietly accumulated under the guise of a mid-level finance employee. I'd never shown it before. Because I didn't think it mattered. I could be ordinary Ethan. Loving and living in peace. But that had changed. I didn't want to be the man who waited until the candle burned out. I wanted to be my real self. Chapter 4. Saturday afternoon. Scarlett asked to meet at a tea house. She said point one last time. Wanted to talk in person. I thought about it. Said yes. The tea house was tucked away in an old lane. Quiet. Just us two. She sat across from me in a plain sweater. No makeup. Hair loose. She looked calmer than the last time. Her tea had gone cold. She hadn't touched it. Ethan. She started. I looked you up. I figured you would. I poured myself a cup. Your grandfather is Edward Lynn. Maplewood Capital. I've read about it in financial magazines. She spoke slowly. All these years, you've been pretending to be a regular employee. You had money, connections. But when my gallery was struggling, you just paid rent out of your salary. You didn't use a cent of family money, because I didn't want that money to be between us. I said, if I told you who I was back then, how would you have seen me? As a savior? Or as someone with a transaction behind his wallet? She looked down at her cup. A small tea stem floated on the surface, spinning slowly. If you told me earlier, she started, then would you have gone to Julian less? I set down the teapot. Scarlett, who I am had nothing to do with whether I deserve to be treated well. You didn't know who I was. And you stood me up 100 times. Now you do. You regret it. But what exactly do you regret? Me. Or the Lynn family resources you lost? She looked up. Eyes wet. No, Ethan. You can't think that. Then how should I think? I met her gaze. 7 years. You chose him 100 times. Now you know who I am. And suddenly you're sorry. How am I supposed to believe that sorry came from love? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The tea house was playing an old song. A woman's voice. Clear and faint. Lyrics indistinct. Just the melody flowing through the air. After a long moment, Scarlett sniffled and said quietly, I'm leaving Bay City. Next month. Going to a gallery in Boston. They want me as a curator. Good. I won't contact him anymore. This time I mean it. Good. I said. She stood up, put a bill under her teacup. Then she walked to my side and paused. She reached out and touched my sleeve that just for a moment, then pulled back. Ethan. Her face was turned away. I'm sorry. I really am. I know. I said. She left. The wind through the lane shook the wind chime over the door. Ding ding ding. I sat alone in the tea house, slowly finishing the cup I'd poured. Then I stood up and left too. On the way home, I texted Sky back. Did you order the suit? She sent a photo. A dark charcoal cashmere jacket hanging on a rack, paired with a navy tie and silver cufflinks. Beneath it, this should look better on you than the off the rack. I looked at it for a few seconds. Replied, I don't own anything off the rack. Is that the only thing you know how to say? I smiled and put my phone away. Outside the bus window, rows of streetlights passed one by one. Evening light stretched the shadows of the trees into long lines across the gray road. The engagement party next week. A lot of people would meet the real Ethan Lynn for the first time. They'd see someone more complete than the version Scarlett had left waiting for 7 years. And that person would never wait for anyone until the candle burned out again. The engagement party was held in that Suzhou garden. Deep winter evening. The garden had only a few lights. Warm ground lamps along the corridors and rockeries, outlining the white walls in soft relief. Little lotus lanterns floated on the pond, their candlelight rippling into fragments of gold, reflecting the moving figures on shore. There weren't many guests. Under 80, but every one of them carried weight. Finance, politics, culture. A few were old friends of my grandfather. Leaning on canes, Sky's family brought a dozen relatives, her father in a dark red tank-style jacket, shaking hands at the entrance with a barely suppressed smile. I stood behind a pillar in the side corridor, in the charcoal cashmere jacket, silver cufflinks glinting. Sky came up behind me and adjusted my tie, stepped back to inspect, and nodded. Not bad. You didn't embarrass me. Who's embarrassing who? I turned to look at her. She wore an emerald green velvet cheongsam. Dark, hand-embroidered, her hair pinned with a white jade hairpin. The engagement ring was on her left middle finger. Not large, but beautifully cut. In the light, it threw a thin blue-white sparkle. She looked at it, then at my bare ring finger. Where's yours? I in my pocket. I said, I'll put it on during the ceremony. You're patient. I learned from you. She smiled slightly, then patted my arm. Come on, time to show yourself. There are a lot of people waiting to see what Edward Lynn's grandson looks like. We walked side by side from the side corridor into the main hall. Our footsteps hit the stone floor. Steady and even, one after the other, matching rhythm. When we passed through the carved moon gate, I felt dozens of eyes converge on us. Curious, appraising, admiring. And a few complicated looks from people I'd worked with before, recalibrating their assessment of me. My grandfather sat in the front on a rosewood armchair, wearing a dark patterned long robe, a teacup in hand. When he saw me, he lifted his eyelids slightly, the corners of his mouth moving. A smile. Almost I bowed to him slightly. He nodded once. The ceremony was simpler than I'd expected. Sky's father made a toast about 2 families coming together. Standard words. But you could tell he was genuinely happy. Then my grandfather stood up, without a microphone. His voice carried across the room. My grandson, Ethan. 28. He's been out there on his own. Now it's time to come back. Today we join the Lynn and Sue families. From now on, we're one. I hope everyone will look after them. Applause. I stood at the front, Sky beside me. A hands width apart. Not touching, but to everyone watching. We looked right together. That's when the commotion started at the entrance. I heard a woman's voice shouting, "Let me in." Security was blocking her. Several guests turned toward the door. The voice got closer, clearer. I saw Sky's brow twitch slightly. She glanced at me, questioning. It's okay. I said, I'll handle it. I walked toward the door. As I passed through the crowd, I caught murmurs. Isn't that the one Ethan used to be with? How'd she find this place? She's going to cause a scene. At the moon gate, I saw Scarlett. She stood between 2 security guards, hair disheveled, coat button crooked. Her face had that reckless, I don't care look. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. Like a drowning person spotting the shore. Ethan. She lurched forward. The guards held her back. I need to talk to you. Just one thing. I waved off the guards, letting her through. She walked toward me, stopping 3 feet away. Behind her, the full hall of guests, eyes like spotlights, focused on us. She didn't seem to care. She stared at me, lips trembling. Ethan. Her voice was loud. Loud enough for the whole room to hear. You can't marry her. You can't. I looked at her face, the face I'd looked at for 7 years. At this moment, it held desperation. pleading, resentment. I knew what she was thinking. She thought if she said this in front of everyone, I'd waver. She was sure I still had feelings for her. Sure I couldn't go through with it. Scarlett. My voice wasn't loud, but clear enough for everyone to hear. For 7 years. You told me wait until next time. I'll make it up to you next time. I always waited. Today I'm not waiting anymore. Scarlett's face went pale. She stumbled back half a step, like she'd finally understood what not waiting really meant. You said you chose me. I continued. But between me and someone else. You chose him 100 times. Today I in this garden. In front of you someone chose me. Scarlett. You chose Julian. Now I'm choosing Sky. The room went silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Sparse at first. Then more. Then more until it spread across the whole hall. Echoing through this winter night garden. The applause cut through the air between Scarlett and me, drowning out any words she might have had. She stood in the middle of it. Like a reed snapped in the wind. Swaying. Her lips moved, but the only sound that came out was 2 words. Barely audible. Really? I didn't answer. I turned and walked back to the center of the hall. Sky stood under the lights. Waiting. When she saw me coming back, she extended her hand. I took it. Her palm was warm, dry and steady. Done. She murmured. Yeah, good. She turned us to face the room and raised her other hand. Waving. Everyone. Sorry for the interruption. Let's continue. People laughed. The atmosphere warmed again. Glasses clinking. Murmured conversations. The occasional bird call from the garden outside. All of it blended together, the perfect soundtrack for this night. I stood beside Sky, holding her warm palm, looking at the full room. Guests. Lights. Glasses. Smiles. Night air drifted in through the open doors. Cool. Carrying the faint fragrance of camellias. Near the end of the evening, Julian showed up. He couldn't get into the garden. Security stopped him at the entrance. I heard faint commotion from outside and went to check. He was being held back on the gravel path by 2 guards. He wore a wrinkled jacket, greasy hair plastered to his forehead. He looked like he'd just crawled out of a construction site. Ethan. He saw me and struggled forward. Come out here. Talk to me. Why did you ruin me? You tanked my project. Seized my house. I have nothing left. Are you happy now? I stopped on the porch. The guard stepped aside, letting him face me from 4 feet away. He was breathing hard. Eyes red. Like a cornered animal. Julian. I said. Your project was hollow from day one. Your financials were fabricated. You were using investor money to pay off your personal debts. And you used Scarlett to bring in your backers. Did you ever think you'd get caught? Fuck you. His lips trembled, his pointing finger shaking. You're just using your family's money and power. You're messing with me. I'm not messing with you. I said. You messed with yourself. I just didn't clean up your mess. Julian stared at me, chest heaving. He opened his mouth several times. To curse. To beg. To threaten. Finally, just one thing came out. Who the hell are you really? Whined through the bamboo beside the path. Leaves rustling. I looked at him, then at the road behind him, lit by streetlights. At the end, a few cars waited, their headlights glowing dimly in the dark. Like quiet punctuation marks. The company that bought your debt. I said. That was a fund my grandfather founded 20 years ago. Julian, that you've been in Bay City for 3 years, thinking you could climb by holding on to Scarlett. But you never asked who the real boss was behind her old investor. You never asked who you were playing with. Julian's face went gray. All the fight left him at once. His shoulders slumped, his whole body shrinking. He stepped back twice, then turned. Stumbling. And ran into the darkness beyond the bamboo. His figure disappeared into the shadows. Footsteps faded. Then silence. I stood on the porch for a while. The bamboo swayed in the wind. Moonlight fell through the leaves and scattered silver specks on the gravel path. Footsteps behind me. Sky came out and stood beside me, looking in the direction Julian had vanished. Gone. Gone. That speech was very dramatic. She said. Is that a compliment? I'm giving you a score. She turned to go back inside. Passing. Come on. There are people waiting to drink with you. I smiled and followed her back into the warm, lit hall. Behind us, the bamboo still swayed in the wind, like it was watching something old and done disappear completely into the night. Chapter 5. A year later. I was coming down from an industry forum, grabbing a coffee in the hallway, leaning by the window to catch my breath. A notification flashed on my phone. A news story about a new private art museum opening in Boston. Curator. Scarlett. I opened it. The photo showed Scarlett in a black suit, standing at the museum entrance. Her hair was shorter to shoulder length. Light makeup. She looked sharper than she had a year ago. She was smiling at the camera. Not a soft, ingratiating smile, but something more open, more at ease. The museum wasn't large, but the space was well designed. She was showing young contemporary artists. Comments below said the curator had a good eye. I looked at it for a few seconds, then locked the screen. Sky walked over, holding a latte the same shade of brown as her sweater. She glanced at my phone. What were you looking at? Nothing. Just the news. I put the phone in my pocket. Are you done yet? Just finished with an LP. She took a sip and studied my face for a moment. That was about Scarlett, wasn't it? I didn't deny it. Sky was always frighteningly precise. Her museum seems to be doing well, she said. I've heard people in the industry mention it. She seems to be actually doing real work now. That's good, I said. Sky turned to lean beside me, shoulder to shoulder. Ethan, how have you been this past year? The question came out of nowhere. I thought about it. Holding my coffee. Good, I said. Work's good. Family's good. You haven't annoyed me. What do you mean I haven't annoyed you? She wrinkled her nose. Like I'm always annoying you. Last week you took my tea leaves to brew your herbal blend. That's called sharing. That was my da hong pao that we bickered in the hallway outside the forum. A passing colleague smiled and nodded at us. One person we knew walked by and murmured, "You two are getting sweeter by the day." Sky glared at them. They laughed and ran off. I looked at her profile. Late autumn sunlight from the floor-to-ceiling windows fell in warm tones across her light brown sweater. She was looking down at her phone, replying to a work message. Then she looked up. What do you want for dinner? My mom said she's saving us food. Your mom's fish stew. Done. Let's go home. We walked out. The car was parked outside. Autumn sycamore leaves covered the ground, crunching underfoot. Sky walked ahead, her hair lifting in the wind as she reached back and tucked it behind her ear. A casual, practiced motion. I walked half a step behind, watching her back. Over this past year, we'd found our rhythm. Steady, unspectacular. She remembered I didn't eat cilantro. I remembered she needed a nightlight to sleep. She brought me local pastries from the airport when she traveled. I left the living room light on when I worked late. No dramatic highs or lows. Peaceful, like two trees in the same yard, growing separately but their roots tangling beneath the soil. Sometimes friends asked about the arranged marriage. Sky always answered with a straight face. It means I don't have to find a boyfriend myself. Very efficient. When people pressed about whether we actually had feelings for each other, she'd glance at me and say, "He's annoying, but I'll manage." I'd just smile and stay quiet. A few days later, I was cleaning out the study. Sky was in the living room, in a video call with her team. Her voice clear and decisive through the wall. The occasional professional term flying out. I listened to that voice and felt at peace. I pulled a few old books off the shelf, reorganizing them. When I pulled out the third one, an envelope fell out. Cream-colored. No return address. I opened it. Inside was a single sticky note. One line of writing. Neat and restrained. I'm sorry. I hope you're happy. I really did love you. No signature. But I recognized the handwriting. Scarlett's. The strokes were all effort. Like everything else about her. Always trying too hard, but always in the wrong direction. I sat at my desk with the note for a while. Sunlight fell through the window, washing the ink pale. The words had been written lightly. The ink lighter than usual. Like she'd hesitated for a long time before putting pen to paper. From the living room, Sky telling her team the proposal was due by 8 p.m. Then, in a lower voice, "Ethan, did you see my charger? I in your coat pocket." I called back. She rustled through her coat. "Found it." "Oh." Then back to her meeting. I folded the note and put it back in the book. I placed the book on the highest shelf, the one I wouldn't reach often. I didn't keep it out of nostalgia. I kept it to remember that I used to be the one who waited until the candle burned out. Now I didn't need to wait anymore. I closed the cabinet and walked to the living room. Sky had just ended her call and was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I walked over and patted the seat beside her. "Come sit." I sat. She swung her legs onto my lap and kept scrolling. I noticed a thin red string tied around her ankle. A small charm from a temple fair last year. I'd picked it up for her for a few dollars. She'd never taken it off. Sky. Nothing. Just saying your name. She looked up and gave me an unimpressed look, then went back to her phone. But the corner of her mouth lifted. A tiny smile. I saw it outside. Dusk was settling. The living room lights were still off, the sky transitioning from orange to blue-gray, softening the outlines of everything into quiet warmth. I remembered that night a year ago. Alone in a French restaurant. A candle burned to nothing. Pulling a ring box out of my pocket, then putting it back. Back then, I thought I'd spend my whole life waiting for someone until I finally gave up, but instead I put away the ring. I walked out of that room. I left that 7-year cycle, and then I met Sky. Someone who wouldn't make me wait. She was poking me with her toes, telling me to turn on the light. I reached over and switched on the table lamp. Warm yellow light flooded the room. Sky squinted at the brightness, then smiled at me. It wasn't a perfect smile, even a little goofy, but when she smiled, the whole room got a little brighter. Ethan, she said. What? Not bad, she said. This arrangement was worth it. I reached over and brushed a strand of hair from her face, then lightly touched her head. Yeah, I said. It was outside. The last of the dusk faded. The sky went fully dark, but inside, the light was on.